Good morning. Welcome back to the Broadcast Retirement Network. I'm Jeff Snyder. This is BRN AM for Wednesday, April 14th, 2021. At our top stories today, the Department of Labor approves the PBGC's missing participant program for defined contribution plans, and is data a plan asset? Well, joining me now to discuss this and a lot more is Kevin Walsh. He's a principal with Groom Law Group, an employee benefits law firm based in Washington, D.C. Kevin, so great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us on the program this morning.
Jeff, it's always great to be on. I mean, the program's great, and it's always good to talk retirement security.
Absolutely. And this topic we're going to talk about in this first segment, this is kind of, you're very well known for this. I know this is kind of a pet project for you. It's about missing participants. And the Department of Labor issued some guidance earlier this year and also has announced that it's going to be expanding the Pension Benefit Guaranty Corporation's missing participant program to define contribution plans. That's a mouthful, but why don't you give us the basics here?
Yeah, so I mean, missing participants is a topic that's near and dear to my heart for a couple reasons. One is because, we can talk retirement security as much as we want, but if when people retire, they don't get the benefits they're promised because they can't be found or for some other reason, then, the retirement system's really not working for those people. And that's led to, a pretty big focus and enforcement on encouraging or developing procedures, developing practices, so that plans and plan service providers do a better job at keeping track of folks who retire, and then that they send them the checks, they wire them the money each month for their pension payments. And one of the frustrations that I've vented on this program repeatedly has been that it's great that everybody wants to pay these folks, but we need rules around it. We need to have some sort of guidance so that if I'm a plan sponsor, if I run an auto shop, I'm not trying to guess what I'm supposed to do to meet my responsibility, and also some acknowledgement that not everybody is going to be found. And earlier this year, DOL issued a couple of pieces of guidance. One of them did, expand the PBGC program, but the other two pieces of guidance I thought were pretty interesting. One of them was a field assistance bulletin, so it's telling the regions who are doing all these investigations, what are things that are red flags for identifying plans where, more investigating or, encouragement or just demands are necessary. And they say things like, if more than a handful of participants are missing, if a high percentage of participants are missing, if participants aren't cashing their checks, if nothing's being done with returned mail. So they've identified some things that are red flags. So, by identifying these things, it helps me work with plan fiduciaries on developing practices around those types of items.
Kevin, you mentioned plan fiduciaries, and having been a record keeper in my past life and actually doing stale dated check procedures and things like that, what are things administratively that you need to be thinking about around this issue? Whether you are the fiduciary, the people around the table responsible for the plan, the administrator, or the record keeper who is record keeping not just one plan, but 1,000 plans, 2,000 plans with millions of participants.
Yeah, so things that DOL has highlighted in this sub-regulatory guidance, and realistically they should go through a regulatory process on this, but they highlight things like, do you have contact information for your participants? And not just contact information, but, are you getting their emails? Are you getting their cell phone numbers? Are you trying to make sure that they list a beneficiary? Because, for every additional method you have for contacting somebody, it's more likely that if you're looking for them, you'll be able to get in touch. If I only have your postal address, maybe I'll be able to stay in touch with you. But if I also have your email address and your cell phone number, then even without having to search, there's a higher likelihood that, you're not going to go missing from me. Or if you try to hide, I'm going to find you. Then, for people who are missing, the Labor Department provides some guidance on what folks should do to search. So, suggestions like use free internet searches, use commercial locator services. Some of them are a little bit odd, use social media searches, which I understand in some contexts that might be legally required for some things. But it's a little creepy if my employer is, really tracking my Instagram feed. And then other things that I view as even kind of more out there, like post a list of missing participants. at work or online. To me, I mean, that's kind of I think next week we'll focus on cybersecurity, because that, posting a list like that really to me raises more concerns than it addresses. But so it's steps like that that the department is encouraging plan fiduciaries to take. Now, the difficulty here is it's not a safe harbor. They say that, some of these steps would be appropriate in some circumstances, others in others, and that their list isn't exhaustive. So if you do these things, there still could be circumstances where the department thinks you should be doing more. But, on the whole, it's somewhat helpful that they're now providing some guidance about what their expectations are and what they think might be effective to help connect these folks who are owed benefits with the benefits due.
And you bring up a really important point back in your initial response to my first question, which was, retirement security. Okay, it's about having a retirement plan, being able to save, but also knowing where all your retirement assets are. And that's a big part. If you don't know, if you've put away money most Americans now are working for multiple companies, Kevin. And when I say multiple, it could be 10, it could be 15, it could be even more than that if you're a gig worker, right? So if you're putting money away in different 401ks or 403bs or governmental 457s, keeping track of that can be really hard if you don't roll over. This is really a fundamental aspect. Tracking your benefits is really a fundamental aspect of retirement security.
Yeah, and this guidance focuses on what plan fiduciaries should do, what service providers should do. But as much as I hate saying it, the easiest way to connect an individual with their benefits is if the individual knows that they're owed a benefit. So if I'm moving around, if I change my cell phone number, I think just about every plan has a way that you can update your contact information. And it's a whole lot more efficient and effective, and you're a lot more likely to get paid. If you reach out to, Fidelity, if you reach out to whoever the contact is in the SPD you get, and keep your contact information updated. Yeah,
and I guess last question here, Kevin. I think you had mentioned maybe there might be some future guidance or direction on this. I mean, this is clearly, well, I don't want to say clearly, is this a priority for labor and other entities within the federal government? And could we see additional guidance? And I don't want to put you in the position of prognostication. That's not fair. But could we see more guidance in the future on this issue and around this issue so that fiduciaries have more direction?
So we've seen a lot of enforcement action. And so that means, there is a lot of interest in it. Now, I've been frustrated that you have enforcement action without guidance, because to me, the first rule of enforcement is there's got to be a rule that you're enforcing. Could we see an actual regulatory process here? We could. If an agency wants to put a rule in place, there's a process they're supposed to use. They haven't used it with missing participants. So, I still have that frustration just from a procedural standpoint. That being said, I hope that, the Labor Department concludes that folks are doing what they can, and maybe they can move on to other goals. On the other hand, if this is going to be a continued focus for the next, 10 years, it would be great to see a notice and comment regulatory process so that folks like me and my clients can at least weigh in and help craft a rule that is workable for both administering a plan and also for increasing the odds folks get found.
Yeah, it is certainly a balancing act, and anytime you do the legislative and regulatory process, you make some really good points. Kevin, I want to go to a quick break. When we come back, what should fiduciaries know about managing planned data? You're going to want to stay tuned right here on BRN AM. Imagine a new television network that will make you richer, healthier, and in control of your financial future. This network is for the policewoman in Nashville, Tennessee, the baker in Dubuque, Iowa, the teacher in Lexington, Kentucky. We want to make the idea of savings and retirement culturally relevant. But what do you see as a defining issue of the midterms? Especially for the smaller businesses. They are the lifeblood of the American economy. featuring exclusive interviews, current affairs, and docuseries. 33 years old, you retired early.
The philosophy is money only matters if it helps you live a life that you love.
But you got to start thinking about retirement as soon as you get in.
The Broadcast Retirement Network will drive very high engagement with premium partnerships. So this isn't retirement and savings for your parents or grandparents. This is for all Americans. And we're going to change the way you think about money. Welcome to the next frontier of retirement and savings. This is BRN, the Broadcast Retirement Network.
Are you stuck with a low credit score? A credit report and score that's causing you to be denied credit or pay higher interest rates than others for the same things? Then do what Terrence did and call Credit Repaired for your free credit evaluation to help restore your credit.
I started thinking about buying a new house, and my score wasn't where I needed it to be. I called and spoke with one of the representatives, and we just had a good conversation, and I liked what he was saying.
Just one call for his free credit evaluation was all it took to start back on the track to repairing his credit.
I'm seeing the deletions and I'm getting the report, so I know something's being done. It does make a difference to me.
All it takes is one call to get started.
Credit Repair has given me a second chance to have a better credit score.
Don't let a low credit score hold you back another day. Do what Terrence did and make the call for your free credit evaluation.
Call 800-819-4152. That's 800-819-4152. Again, 800-819-4152.
Welcome back. We're talking to Kevin Walsh of Groom Law Group. Kevin, thanks as always for staying with us this morning.
Thanks, Jeff. I mean, 2 segments is better than 1, so I'm happy being here still.
Well, we certainly appreciate it. You kind of teased this a little bit. The second topic, we talked about a little bit about plan data, and want to get your sense for developments in this arena for fiduciaries. If you're a fiduciary of a retirement plan or a benefit plan, healthcare plan, or are there some other benefit, what do you need to know today about managing data within the plan? When I say data, indicative data, social security number, name, date of birth, all that kind of good stuff that kind of frames out the administration of a retirement plan or benefit plan.
So data really is an emerging issue in the ERISA space, in the retirement space. And data comes up in really 2 ways. So we'll probably talk about both of them. But the first way it comes up is, what are you doing to protect it? So, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, there wasn't a lot of, cybersecurity risk. There wasn't a lot of, data breaches. There wasn't a lot of, social engineering of participants to get their account balances. Now there is. Now there's more of that. So there are, cyber criminals out there who are trying to find out, names, date of birth, social security numbers. And they're trying to do it to do things like identity theft or to steal assets. So one thing that, plan fiduciaries really should be thinking about now is, what steps can I take to help reduce the likelihood that that's going to happen? Under ERISA, even if this were like a core responsibility and it's unclear about that, the idea would be that, take prudent steps to mitigate the risk of bad things happening to your participants because of their participation in your plan. We're seeing things like a number of cases where record keepers were hacked, or record keepers had allowed for participants' money to be stolen as a result of participant data being stolen. And courts are kind of all over the map right now on who's responsible, what the responsibility is. Is it strict liability, or do you have to look at the facts and circumstances? So if you're a plan fiduciary, my first thing would be, figure out what you're doing to protect your data. And then, if you get bad answers, if you find out that you're not doing much, or you find out your service providers aren't doing what you want them to do, think about developing a more robust process.
Yeah, and Kevin, just to, you are heavily involved within the industry. This is beyond missing participants. This is another hot topic for you and your colleague David Levine at Groom. Data management. You're seeing a lot of the associations and the industry within the retirement industry, and I presume the benefits industry really step up here. It's not like nothing is going on, but these are plans that have been around, some of them for over 40 years. There's a lot of data that is there, and the industry has had to play a little catch up because we didn't know all this was going to exist 40 years ago. We had like 8-bit computers back then.
Well, yeah. And if we go back to missing participants, the labor department is encouraging you to have almost as much data as you can because, having more data has some upsides, but it also has some downsides. I think you're spot on. I mean, I think the other area where data really comes up in the retirement plan context is, with participant information, how is it being used? And that's a topic that's really emerged a lot in the last 5 years as plan sponsors and as plan participants have demanded kind of a more holistic approach to, financial education and wealth management. So, I mean, traditionally, we think retirement plan, we think, either a pension or a 401k. And you think about the 401k as this vehicle for getting folks to retirement. But, starting maybe 5-10 years ago, folks really started saying, well, I've got student loans. Well, I've got outside money. Well, I've got a mortgage. Is there a way that I can find somebody to give me advice, not just for my retirement plan, but take my retirement plan into account and look across the board? And kind of as a result of that, some retirement plan service providers have started, or they started, looking at the information they had in plan. So, I may get a copy of I may know where you work. I may know your employment history. I may know your name. I might even know your account balance. And then reaching out to individuals who might be interested in these additional services. So, you fit this profile of being a certain age demographic. I know this about you, that you're not contributing much to your plan. Maybe I should reach out to figure out if it's student loans that are preventing you from saving for retirement. And this, when we're looking at in the world of big data, kind of raises some concerns, or it could raise some concerns. And I think folks are working through what it means, because on the one hand, it's great that people are getting more personalized and more holistic financial advice. On the other hand, some folks are concerned that service providers are reaching out and offering additional services based on information they're getting as a plan service provider.
Yeah, and that's where I would think, Kevin, that contract, that record-keeping service provider contract, really important to make sure it is updated. One, Kevin, these entities you're referring to, the record keeper service providers, they're creating new services literally maybe every 6 months to meet the demand that they're seeing. So you want to make sure that you have, I would think, these contracts, agreements all locked up, that you understand what data is being transmitted. Can't get it out this morning. What's being transmitted and who's responsible for it and how it's being used, and whether or not there's going to be opportunities to cross-sell, right? I mean, those are things that you really want to probably take a look at as a fiduciary.
Yeah, I mean, so there's not like a right or wrong answer here. There's not an obvious choice because, I mean, and it's kind of clunky. I mean, the idea of ERISA is it's supposed to help people get to a secure retirement. However, dollars are fungible and people have a multitude of financial goals. So there is some tension there. But if you're a plan fiduciary and you haven't thought about how your service providers are using the data and whether there's additional services being provided outside of the plan or marketing services as a result of participation in the plan, it might be worth, either taking a look at your contract, picking up the phone and calling the service provider, getting an understanding of what's going on. Where we are right now, there's not a clear right or wrong answer here. But depending on how you frame the issue and depending on how you look at it, you could see this emerging in kind of two very different directions. I mean, I think you said cross-selling a minute ago. I've also said things like, making folks aware that,
sure,
that they can help meet other life financial goals. So it really comes down to that.
Yeah, and I wasn't denigrating the term cross-sell. That happens all the time, right? You want to create opportunity and that benefits the end user, the participant. I guess the last question, Kevin, I mean, do you see, we talked about possibly more regulation, more regulatory guidance, maybe more legislation in the future. Do you think that maybe is a balancing act here, because you don't want to take people away or disincentivize people, organizations, from creating new services that provide financial wellness and personal advice and kind of solve some of these, student loan issue, for example, right? But do you see more guidance and things coming down the line for this new administration, new Department of Labor, and some of the other entities that nibble around retirement plans?
So, I mean, I think the use of data is a topic that's not only an emerging topic, but it's here to stay. I mean, we've seen states like California and Virginia issue comprehensive regulation of kind of the use of data. Now, they both have provided, good carve-outs, at least in the short term, for data used in the context of employment. That being said, I mean, I think it is in the spotlight, and that, regulators, Congress, and state legislators are all going to struggle and, weigh the pros and cons of essentially providing folks with targeted information versus, providing folks with a stronger control over the use of, or access to, or marketing based on information related to them.
Yeah, well, certainly the benefits world is not immune to technology and the implications of the use of technology. Kevin Walsh, it is always a pleasure to see you. Thanks so much for joining us on the program this morning. And of course, we always look forward to having you back again very soon.
Thanks for me on, Jeff, and thanks everybody for watching.
And that wraps up this episode of BRN AM. Have a topic of interest, someone you think we should talk to, then drop us a line. And don't forget, for all the information in retirement markets, technology, personal finance, so much more, check out today's edition of our daily newsletter, The Morning Pulse, and of course, our website. We're back again tomorrow, so until then, I'm Jeff Snyder. Stay safe, keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes.
Are you being audited, and do you owe the IRS $10,000 or more in back taxes? Is the IRS threatening to take more of your money? Don't fight the IRS alone. The Tax Doctor is here to help you negotiate your tax bill and reduce your stress. The IRS can freeze your assets and seize your bank accounts, but you can stop these IRS actions. The Tax Doctor will work with you using our years of experience to represent your case to help you get the best resolution under the IRS guidelines. Help is here to deal with the IRS to reduce your stress. We've handled thousands of cases, so we know what we're doing. If you owe $10,000 or more in back taxes, do not call the IRS alone. Call a Tax Doctor now for a tax emergency analysis.
Call 800-224-6439.